Chemical changes and physical changes. You will see this in Chemistry 11 if you get that far, and certainly in Science 8, 9, and 10. A physical change means you end up with the same material you started with. There's no change in the properties. That's why it says does not produce. You might want to underline that. Substances with different properties. Good thing we studied properties earlier. If we're looking at chemical formulas, the formulas will look the same. Physical changes are often reversible. So the changes of state we did in the KMT section, like melting and freezing and subliming, are all examples of physical changes. If we break a window, if we grind up a crystal into smaller bits, if we dissolve something, if we distill something, those are all examples of physical changes. Here's NaCl, it becomes NaCl. Formula didn't change. Here's H2O, it becomes H2O. Didn't change. In the second case, we went from a solid to a liquid. That's why it's called melting. So to a chemist, physical changes can be rather dull, but they're also very important. Chemical changes produce different materials with different properties. And in terms of formulas, the formulas will change. And in Chemistry 11 and Science 8, 9, and 10, we'll talk about how chemical changes are often irreversible. If you get to Chemistry 12, we'll study all kinds of reversible reactions just to be confusing. So rather than examples of chemical changes, we're going to have things that indicate a chemical change may have occurred. If you see a color change, let's say you start with something that's black and you finish later and it's yellow, that is going to be a chemical change in all likelihood. If you mix things together and you're not adding any heat or electricity, and all of a sudden you get all kinds of heat or electricity, that means you've made energy. And that's probably a chemical change. And you can actually do reactions where it suddenly gets very cold, and that's also likely to be a chemical change. Original substance being used up is not very helpful. Precipitate forming means suddenly we had solutions and they go cloudy. And they go cloudy because we made a solid that doesn't dissolve. So if we see that, if something turns cloudy, that means we made a precipitate and it's a chemical change. If you mix things and you're not adding heat and suddenly you get bubbles indicated by fizzing, that means you've made a gas and that's going to be a chemical change. And anytime you see burning, chemical change. That means reaction with oxygen. So here we have sodium. We put it in water. You saw this earlier in this course. And the sodium loses an electron, becomes sodium hydroxide, and we make hydrogen gas that may blow up. The formulas on the left, called the reactant side, are different from what we made. If we take calcium carbonate, which could be limestone or chalk, and we gently heat it, we can make calcium oxide and we give off CO2 gas. We've changed the formulas. Chemical change. And don't forget, little g for gas, little l for liquid, little s for solid, and AQ, think of aquarium. Aqua means water, so aqueous means dissolved in water. So make sure you know this sheet, very important.